The purpose of this video is to introduce you to your first major writing assignment, the essay in which you will be considering photography as science or art. The goal of this assignment is for you to examine the variety of functions that photography has served since its earliest moments. It's also to strengthen your visual analysis skills. You're going to be reading a primary source and considering how the author's view compare with your visual analysis, and then to develop a thesis that incorporates both visual and textual analysis. There are many resources for you. I have these linked within the assignment, but they're also available in the modules from the last few weeks. The first one is the primary source, Edgar Allan Poe's 1840 essay on the daguerreotype. You should also go back and read the essays about the individual artworks you'll be discussing, the Daguerre Artist Studio and Anna Atkins's her cyanotypes of ferns. Last week we had a discussion in which we did close analysis of daguerreotypes. Last week you might have written a close analysis of this very daguerreotype. And then this week, we also have a discussion in which we are looking at commercial and scientific photographs. Everything that appears in these discussions are things that you can use in your essays. It's not plagiarism if you are incorporating ideas that we developed as a class. So here's the question. Upon the invention of photography, it was not immediately clear whether the image-making technique was a scientific or an artistic innovation. Write an essay in which you consider the public reception of photography using Edgar Allan Poe's The Daguerreotype as your primary source. Your essay should summarize Poe's expectation of photography and develop a thesis that either supports or refutes his claims for the new medium. Using Daguerre's The Artist Studio and Anna Atkins and Anne Dixon's Polypodium Phegopteris as examples, consider how Poe's analysis overlooks the artistic qualities of the new medium. Be sure to insert and analyze at least one quotation from Poe's essay. These are the two visual examples that you'll be discussing. Both of them have appeared in assignments already this semester. So the Daguerre still life you wrote about potentially last week as your formal analysis example. And then in our discussion this week, the Atkins and Dixon cyanotype was an option for one of the discussion threads. When you are writing about these, you should definitely be incorporating specific visual analysis using the terms that we discussed. You're also going to want to discuss the history of them. Why did Daguerre make this? Did he make it to be an artwork? What were his goals? Similarly, why are Atkins and Dixon producing these scientific volumes? What is the context for its production? That needs to appear in your essay. The primary source that you are discussing is an essay that Edgar Allan Poe wrote in 1840 titled The Daguerreotype, in which he writes about what he thinks photography is going to be. You will be incorporating a quote from that essay, and so you're going to want to read it closely. That is something that I discussed in the introduction video for this week, week 3. Okay, so I've given very specific description of how I want you to structure your essay. You will have an introduction paragraph. That's where you're going to be summarizing Poe's argument and incorporating a quote. And then your thesis is going to discuss whether Poe overlooks the artistic potential of the medium. Your first body paragraph is going to be about the Daguerre. You need to think about whether Poe's ideas about photography can be applied to all photographs. Your topic sentence is going to make an argument about whether Daguerre's photograph supports or refutes Poe's claims. In your second body paragraph, you're going to do the same thing, but you're going to use the Atkins and Dixon cyanotype as your example. In both of these paragraphs, where you're discussing the visual examples, you will have specific descriptions of the formal and stylistic choices of the artworks, and you're also going to describe the history of their production, why each artist is making them, what their goals were for these final artworks. Then, as a conclusion, you're going to restate your major ideas. So at this point, everything I'm talking to you about is probably going to be useful for everything that you produce this semester. And so you might want to return to this moment. So as you are developing your thesis, the thing to think about with a thesis is that typically they are identifying a tension within scholarly attitudes around an object. So For this one, an example would be many scholars or writers believe this thing about daguerreotypes, but the visual evidence suggests this other thing. So the tension here is, well, Edgar Allan Poe says this, but the photographs say this. So here's an example of what could be a thesis. Daguerre described his invention as a tool for reproducing nature, but his photographs suggest that artistic ideals were central to his early practice. So that thesis is kind of the contrast between Daguerre says this, but the photographs say this. Most of your theses are going to look like that. They're going to be something like, the writers say this, but the photographs say this. It's very important that your thesis doesn't simply repeat the question. So like, I don't want a thesis that's like, this essay is going to discuss whether photography is an art or science. We don't need that. As you are thinking about your quotes, you really want to choose quotes that are argument driven. So like, you don't want to take a quote that's like just summarizing some fact about the photograph or from the article. It should be something that is an idea. Like, so for example, for the Edgar Allan Poe, a good quote could be, "The instrument itself must undoubtedly be regarded as the most important and perhaps the most extraordinary triumph of modern science." So that's a quote that's stating Poe's idea that photography is a scientific tool. Once you've chosen a quote, you need another sentence following it that analyzes that quote. This is important because you cannot let the quote substitute your own analysis. You're in control of this essay. It has to be your analysis of the quote. Within your body paragraphs, the very first sentence should be kind of like a mini thesis. It needs to be an argument. So this would be a summarizing topic sentence. Daguerre invented the daguerreotype in 1837. That is not a great way to start any paragraph. That's a fact that anybody knows. You're not making an argument there, you're just summarizing. A better topic sentence would be, Daguerre's first successful photograph imitated the composition of painted still lifes. So that's stylistic analysis, right? And you're talking there about what the visual choices he's making. That is explaining the significance of the stylistic analysis. Another thing to keep in mind, never ever use a quotation in place of a topic sentence. The topic sentence is your space to make your argument. So I use the same grading rubric for all of these for the most part. It's a 4-part grading rubric, and I recommend going back to the orientation materials to look at it. But if you look on this slide here, these are the things that I'm looking at when I'm grading each part. So thesis. Are you using stylistic analysis to answer the prompt? Are you identifying tensions in attitudes about photography? For stylistic analysis, are you using the style that you've identified within the photography to support your claims? Are they aligning with the theme of the essay in terms of, like, are you thinking about how these are both scientific and artistic? Organization, I've given you a really clear organization for every one of these essays. This also comes down to, do you have an argument-driven topic sentence? So that's something we'll be working on all semester. And then finally, presentation, is it grammatically correct? Are you italicizing the titles of artworks? Is there passive voice? Does it meet the word limit? So some notes on grammar. You should italicize the titles of artworks. That's just the way we do it in art history. Write in the third person, no I, we, or you. Spell check, avoid contractions, avoid passive voice. So all of this also appears in the orientation materials. I've got that linked in the assignment. I recommend going back and looking at it and then looking very closely at the grading rubric as well.